Let me introduce you to Margaret Christie of CISA. Harrison Bardwell of Bardwell Farm in Hatfield. And Missy Barrett of Old Friends Farm in Amherst. I want to thank them for being with us tonight and ask you to tell us a little bit about your farms and about your work, Margaret. So go ahead, Missy, and speak into the microphone.
Okay, we'll see. There we go. That's how these things work. So I co-own and run a 28-acre diversified veggie salad and flower farm in Amherst, about a mile from here. And it's the 16th year. And we sell mainly wholesale, but we also sell at the Amherst Farmers Market and the Northampton Tuesday Market and to stores and restaurants in the area.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Harrison Bardwell. I'm 22 and I run a 15-acre diversified vegetable farm in Hatfield, Mass. We do a lot of sustainable growing practices. We currently grow off a roadside farm stand. We're starting a CSA this season, and we like to work with the local community selling to other restaurants and bed and breakfasts. Just to give you a little background, our farm was established in 1685, so we go back quite a while. And I'm the new owner of the farm. It kind of got retired when my grandfather retired, and I picked it back up about 6-7 years ago and started my own business. So
That's impressive. Margaret.
I'm Margaret Christie. I'm the Special Projects Director at Whately. Not at Whately, at CISA. Community involved in sustaining agriculture. I live in Whately. I do a lot of different things at CISA, some of our program planning, some of our work kind of connecting farmers and buyers, so working with distributors, thinking about processing, thinking about financing for farms. And I'm sorry if I'm doing something that's making that noise. Should we? Okay. All right. My family and I grow a lot of the food that we eat at home. So we grow our meat, we grow vegetables, we grow fruit, we have dairy growths, so we produce milk, but we have some of the complexity that we saw in that movie on the most tiny and not, make or break kind of scales, and without the lovely design.
I want to ask each of our panelists to say something or some things about the film, what your thoughts were. We'll just start there. Missy?
Let's see, what I can relate to that film is the complexity of working with like a dream and a vision and people, and then all these other factors that just are out of control and create this puzzle that just really requires us to be dynamic and resilient with our plan. So I relate to that of the farm. Definitely smaller scale than that.
yeah, I think this movie is probably the best example I've ever seen of a fully functioning diversified vegetable farm or diversified farm in general. I think it's any diversified farmer's dream that probably will never come true unless you can get that far. I think this movie shows a lot of the ups and downs that especially new beginner farmers, but farmers who have also been farming for 40 years deal with on a daily basis. The struggles and the rewards, the hard days of the animals getting killed versus the babies being born. And also just showing that love of nature and that excitement and just the beautiful aspect of what farming is as a whole. And I think this is the best way to show it. This movie represents that the best, and it's definitely something I dream about at night to be able to achieve. So it's cool. I relate to it a lot. A very well put out film, and I think any farmer would like to be in their shoes. It's cool.
Thank you.
I sort of wanted to ask the audience, what did you all see going on? I guess my question is, what helped that farm get started that most farms don't have?
Money,
Money,
yeah.
and money, from an outside source, which clearly most farms don't have. And on the other hand, I think there is a role for community investment and community support in allowing farms to overcome the huge challenges that they face in a food system that really isn't designed to support, that kind of agriculture. And asking farmers to fix that all on their own is a pretty big challenge, since they didn't, create the forces that make it really hard to do that. So I think that balance of, on the one hand, it is not realistic that everybody could have that kind of money supporting their startup, and on the other hand, how do we provide some support so that farms can get, begin to chip away at that? That's a really big question, I think, for all of us to be asking ourselves.
Yeah. A question for you. Do we in Massachusetts, New England, need to deal with the kind of natural disasters, droughts, fires, etc., that California and other places seem to have, or do we just have different kinds of challenges? Both of you, yes.
Yeah, across the world, farmers deal with a lot of natural disasters on a daily basis. You can look at this past season with the excessive amount of rainfall we had day after day, week after week, that really sadly destroyed a lot of crops in the valley and farmers' livelihoods. And you can look, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now, the big drought we had, which really, on the other side, did the same thing. Made it hard to water our crops so they could survive, just like we need water to survive. So whether it's something as big scale as, excessive droughts or excessive rainfall, I think on a daily basis there's always struggles that we're facing with anyways, whether it's the tire blows out on your tractor, or the animals get loose or something, or you find the disease that hits your tomatoes first in the season. So it's adapting and overcoming those things. It's like my grandfather always said, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. She's your boss. She kind of controls how you do things and what happens on a daily basis. So that's where we come in to adapt and overcome how we can get through those different things. So.
I guess to add to that, I think that's where a diversified farm with these different fluctuations of rain and no rain and wind is getting to be more and more of a factor. Even the heating degree days and the amount of sunlight, that was a huge factor of last year, not having enough sunlight for ripening. And certainly we've got some pollination issues with honeybee decline, and pest problems seem to be increasing, but bringing it back to having a diversified farm, like something's always going to do okay. And I've been really thankful to have stuck with several different avenues, because there's always something that has a great year. So that keeps us going.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is, like Harrison's grandfather said, like farmers have always dealt with weather, and our weather is changing. Our climate's changing, and the fires and droughts that they're dealing with in California are getting worse, and the volatility of our weather and the extremes of both rainfall and drought are getting worse here because of climate change.
It seems like to be a farmer you need to be an optimist and to have a lot of energy. Yeah. Shall we open it up to questions from the audience? Anybody have a question or comment? Yes.
The film did gloss over the amount of money necessary and what the return on investment was and how they So I'm just curious about what was your reaction to that as farmers? Were you thinking this is a dream to have that much money, or where does it come from? Or I'm curious what your reaction was to the money aspect. So
Yeah,
politically, not-
thank you. Let me just repeat the question. The film's really glossed over the amount of money that it took and really didn't address the return to the investors. So can you comment on that? And, I guess the question is that a dream of yours or realistic, or where do you come out?
I'll start with that. I have no idea how much that investment is. It's far past what I would be able to comprehend as far as purchase of a land and the installation of that scale and that age. Planting those trees, they weren't little tiny trees. And I would say my hunch is that crew that looked big, that was a tiny little sliver of what's working that land. I can't imagine. I mean, I saw maybe 25 different faces in that film, and I bet you it's a crew of 100 at least for that. And so as far as the money amount, I mean, I'm like $3,000 in a pickup truck is what I started with 16 years ago. And I have no concept of how much that would take.
Yep, farms are expensive to run, and it takes a lot of money and a lot of effort to start them from the ground up. I'm 6 years into business. Granted, I started with a lot more than a new beginner farmer would have. But every day I wake up wishing I had a little more to get going, or something new that I could do to new equipment, or another employee, another tool in my toolbox to just be able to get that extra step. And what they had given to them is just, like I said, it's a dream that probably a lot of people like us, will never experience. That crew, like Missy was saying, that's just a little small sliver to run an operation like that. I run 15 acres, and I have 3 to 4 to 5 people daily in the heart of our season, cranking out crops and harvest. There were over 200 acres or so of animals, tree fruits, vegetables, anything you can think of. So to run an operation like that is pretty extraordinary. It's something my head would never be able to handle, but again, something I wish I could do. So.
Yeah, Margaret, any comments?
I don't think I have anything to add to that.
I'm curious about your success in finding people who want to work on your farms and who you can afford to pay. Is it hard to find people? How do you find them, and how do you keep them?
Yeah, people don't want to work. People don't want to do labor anymore, and I think a lot of farmers are realizing that there's far and few between that want to go get their hands dirty or get paid minimum wage to be able to do that. And me personally, I don't have $1 million to pay everyone top notch, which I would like to do, because some people are really good at what they do and are worth more than $1. So it's hard to find labor. You kind of have to pick and choose and get what comes to you. I'm 6 years in, like I said, so I'm kind of building that workforce that maybe farms that are older already have established. So I might have a little more hurdles than you might have, but it's hard to find work. It's hard to find people that want to work, and there's few and far people between that really support local sustainable agriculture. Your heart's got to be in it more than the money, and that's what farmers are. They do it for the love of it, not the investment, the money that comes out of it. So yeah, we have to work year after year with what we get handed to us, and use it at the best of our ability, I think. And a lot of people have good employees versus bad, and you cope with that, you live and you learn, and figure out what works best.
Missy? Yeah.
I definitely would agree that there's a learning curve with where you want to take your farm and the team you want to work with for it. Let's see, kind of with the help of holistic management, those concepts. My farm started really thinking about like triple bottom line, so not just financial but social and environmental as well, and basically coming up with a holistic goal and saying, all right, if we can't do it, meeting these three things, let's bail. So that was like kind of like when we finally jumped 2 feet into it, and we realized it took a lot of energy to have employees, new employees every year, and so we started really investing in how to keep employees. And the crew is 18 now, with my business partner and myself included, and all returnees, which I'm really proud of, and I feel like the team keeps developing each year. We're a little rusty with hiring, which is sort of the opposite, but I think that as a farm gets more and more established, and certainly with our goal of retention of employees, and trying to provide as much year-round work as we can, it's been a game changer for us as far as how our business has been able to evolve with people who are invested in and willing to stay, and yeah, filtering the money back as best as we can and making smart choices is part of the puzzle. So.
Yeah.
I want to really call that out because I think labor is an enormous challenge for farmers in Massachusetts and across the country. And I think that focus that Missy and Casey and their farm have put on how do we build a system that can keep people is unusual and commendable and hard. So. And I guess the other thing, kind of combining the last question and this one, the question about money and investment, most of us are not able to reach into our pockets and say, I'm going to fund, a farm that's going to really do things differently and think about the ecological relationships and be able to put them in place the way they were on the screen. Like, most of us can't do that. But in fact, we are, through our tax dollars, making investments in one kind of farming over another, and at the moment in the United States, we're not recognizing at the federal level our reliance on immigrant labor in general, in the big picture, to plant and harvest our food, and creating an immigration policy that acknowledges and respects those workers. And so that's a place where again, all of us can't reach into our wallets and fund something, but we do have an impact on the kind of policies, or we can try to have an impact on the kind of policies that our government implements, and they do impact farms every day.
I have just one more comment about that, and another way of that, like reaching into the pockets, like maybe it's not big dollars there, but if they're heading right locally to buy food, it's immensely supportive for our farms, and just making that sort of conscious consumerism step to eat locally is absolutely vital. And supporting CISA, CISA has been really instrumental in not only the buy local campaign of making sure everybody knows where to buy locally, but providing a lot of professional development opportunities. So, like, for instance, just that we can be developing in so many aspects of the business through the workshops that CISA offers. It's really been exceptional. So I feel like that's the way that, if your pockets aren't that deep, they're still deep enough that you still have to eat, and So, like, yeah, it's been really amazing to see farmers markets bloom, I think directly because of CISA sharing where they are, and markets, some market management really being progressive in and innovative in getting people to market to have a really fun atmosphere and create community, which is like another benefit of buying locally.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
It was a fantastic movie in the sense of the photography showing you the insects, the snails. I mean, you could say probably all those things, but they're showing them to you in a way that you can follow it, which, you know, like most of us would say, oh my God, they have snails, you know, and then they find, what is it, the ducks eat the snails. You know, it's just like mind-boggling to see it actually all played out.
Yeah.
And for this, I'm going to recommend everybody I know come see this.
Thank you. Yeah. The comment was a compliment to the photography and being able to actually see the things that the narrator was talking about. It was really beautifully photographed. And I have to say, pigs are impossibly cute, too. Other comments or questions? Yeah, back there in the middle. I'll get you next, but there's someone behind you, I think. No, I guess not. Go ahead.
It occurred to me, I was wondering, how many of these investors were investing in a farm, and how many of them were investing in a movie?
How many people were investing in a farm and how many in a movie? Well, I can tell you movies are not lucrative. That's not a lucrative business for the most part.
It was definitely obvious that from the start they had the thought to film.
Right. Right, and he was a filmmaker or involved in film production in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's right here.
I'm just curious, what's your advice for a young person?
So, what's your advice for a young person?
That already wants to get into farming, keep going, and then that hasn't yet is get into food, and shop at farmers market and start preparing food and then start growing it yourself. Little plants, you know, a little bit.
Question was, what about practical or academic education?
Yeah, I went to school for integrated natural resources and art, and I feel like it's exactly that. But did I know that? No.
I'd say farming is something that you're not going to learn sitting in a classroom. I started when I was 12 years old digging in my grandparents' garden, and that's what sparked me to, become a farmer. It wasn't because my farm's been in production for over 300 years. If you like playing in the dirt, in the soil, if you like looking at nature, if you like the hot sun and the pouring rain, if you like working your tail off 12 hours a day, I think that's where it all starts. If you like that, I guess your life it'll carry you to where you want to be. And I went to Stockbridge, UMass, in the 2-year sustainable food and farming major, which was really my first education in agriculture. I can't say I've seen a lot of younger education in agriculture, unfortunately, which is something personally I want to see in school systems, elementary school systems. That farming is where your food comes from, and granted, a lot of kids around here know that their food comes from the fields around them, but you go to New York and you talk to a 5-year-old, they probably think it comes from the grocery store. And that's something I want to eliminate because no one understands how hard it is to grow food unless you've actually seen it and you've been there. And I can't say you will live it because we live it every day and you guys eat the food that we produce. But It's like I said, starting with your hands in that soil and carrying it from there, I think is your best way to know if you're really going to like it or not. And I'd say farming is definitely not for everyone. I've met people that gung-ho about getting their hands dirty and, working a killer week, and they don't come back the next season. So, but yeah, we need farmers. So if you want to farm, yeah, we need food.
Margaret, you want to speak to that?
No, I think those were good answers. And I think I guess I am speaking to it now, but I think one of the assets we have in the Pioneer Valley related to farms is that there are a lot of farms that people can work on, and there are farms that provide great training to to people who are working there, and people are able to move up in management, and then if they eventually found their own farm, they've got a lot of skills, not only in knowing how to plant and how to weed, but knowing how to manage people and knowing a little bit about the finance, how the financial management and that kind of thing. And those are huge assets to come in with. So in addition to really good, more formal programs like Stockbridge, like Hampshire College, we also have some really good informal training and opportunities, which is great.
Some of it provided by CISA, I'm sure, yes. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
I just wanted to comment about the power of this film. It is powered by the quietness a lot of the time. It is powered by action and by disappointment. And these moments, these varied moments, they really held weight in so many different ways as you watch this film.
Yeah, a compliment again to the film. Yeah. Yes, behind you there. Yeah.
This is just a compliment to you. This is a film that everyone should see, and I'm so grateful that you're bringing it back. And it's not just a one-off, because I, for one, will tell everybody about it. I want to see it again.
Thank you. We appreciate the patronage. I saw this film in Toronto at a film festival and really wanted to bring it here. And I'm just so glad that we could do this tonight with our friends on the panel, and that we will have it back for a full run. George, can you turn the lights up a little bit more? It's a little hard. It's hard to see. Yes, up back there.
Yeah, it's hard to see
It's
you.
hard to see.
I was struck by, I've always thought of food as, I have a large garden and eat fairly organic. I've always thought of food as a healthy thing for myself, but I was really struck on, in the world now, we are at a real crisis point environmentally, and this is, I think this needs to be seen by politicians and, because it's a real solution, taken to a bigger scale. And it seems like a way to address that, and money coming to you would serve purposes for healing the environment in a way that's really necessary at this point.
Thank you. Way in the back. Yep. Okay.
I'm going to say my question now. Okay, so I know like a lot of the produce in the U.S. is like farmed on a really big scale, or it's not even grown in the U.S. It's that we buy. So how could it be supported to have diversified agriculture on a really big scale, and is that possible?
So the question is how to support diversified agriculture on a really big scale. Do you have an answer?
You don't want a large-scale diversified vegetable farm that's 4,000 acres or something. You want a million farmers that are growing on, 15, 20 acres. And what that does is bring more people into your community that are growing food. So your food's traveling less because you have more farmers in a centralized area. The other, needs for a farm will arise because the demand is there. And I'm no expert on, the future of farming, but from everything I've been taught and learned and, heard in the past 6 years is that the more farms we have, the better. The more farms closer to communities, the better. There's reasons they're trying to put factory farms in the middle of cities because the food's not traveling, hundreds of miles to get to their plate. Because it's more sustainable to grow and purchase the food that's grown in your back door versus, the food that's grown in California. So to me personally, I don't think large-scale diversified vegetable farms should be a thing. I think the small-scale diversified vegetable farm is what's going to be the future of, food, and that combats with climate change, and that whole picture of, taking the travel out of it and bringing people closer together and really being able to build those ecosystems that you saw in this movie that, should exist on a daily basis. This is how everyone should be farming. And it's not easy. And, we till the land year after year because it's easy. It's easier. That's how they've, that's how they've developed agriculture to make it easy to produce more food for, the growing population we have. And it's easier to plant a seed into that and grow it. This is not easy, but this is what's going to, create the future for agriculture and the earth that we live on. So,
Missy, do you have a comment?
I guess I just want to put a plug in for any bit of lawn space can be a little mini farm. And, the thought that every time you or your kids or your neighbors or, anyone is walking by a little piece of lawn, they could be grabbing a handful of berries or some cherry tomatoes or, it doesn't have to be just like dish it off to us as farmers, but like take it on too to grow some food. And I think that all sort of wraps up into the value of the food system.
Yeah.
I love that. I think those are both really great and important comments, and I'm going to kind of zoom from Missy's like little corner in your backyard or on your street to like the big picture. And I used to say a lot that our food system is broken and that we all need to work on fixing it. And lately, every time I have a chance, I go and hear Leah Penniman, who farms at Soulflower Farm in New York State, and she says, our food system is not broken. Our food system is working exactly the way it was designed to work. Only that's not really working for us. It's working for a lot of other things that aren't benefiting all of us. And in particular, she has a really detailed, thoughtful analysis of how the way our food system works rests on the back of some fundamental, long-standing problems, beginning with the theft of land from the people who lived here first, and continuing through a very long tradition of exploiting the labor of the people who grow our food. So those are big, really long-standing problems, and they can make you feel like, getting to what you asked for, like how do we make that happen all over? It can make you feel like it's really hard. And at the same time, I think the solutions, like building the farms on every corner and bringing them closer to the people, really address a lot of the big problems that we're facing right now. Things like climate change, they're not going to be solved by local agriculture, but local agriculture is part of the solution for that. Things like income inequality and how do we have better schools where kids are well fed enough that they can learn in school. all of those things can be helped by a food system, a local food system that is designed to support communities and community health and the health of all the people who live here. And so a lot of people are inspired to try to work on that because those are, you know, just like the movie was sort of this beautiful picture of what things could be, building the picture that Harrison and Missy are painting of small, diverse local farms is a really beautiful picture of how not only can we build more ecological health, but we can build more community health. So I think lots of people want in on making that happen, and that's why we have a chance of doing it.
I think we have time for a couple more questions. Way up at the top. Yep.
A little reality about the whole economy of the farm. And, you know, yeah, we have to work for minimum wage and on and on. And then that was all a choice, you know, as a percentage of our income as a society, we pay less than we ever have for food. And most investor farms that you're seeing aren't building these nice little rosy pictures. You're talking mega agriculture that's where the investors are going. Because it's a constant race to the bottom. Everybody wants the cheapest thing, it's cheap, and we can all sit here and think it's very nice by local, and it is, I'm all about it. But the reality is, there's so much less money at the bottom for the people that need to spend it on food. That's the whole thing to me, is that there's just not enough money at the bottom.
Yes, I think you're right. I think the rise in income inequality is a huge part of the problem why we can't pay enough for food to grow it the way it ought to be grown. I completely agree.
Yep. In the middle there.
How involved is the valley in Woofs?
How involved is the valley in?
I believe it's Woofs.
Oh, the woofing system, probably. Yeah. Do you want to explain what that is?
WOOF stands for Willing Workers on Organic Farms. And I think there's WOOF New England. I've sort of randomly met a few people, but I think of it more as out on the West Coast and then definitely other countries. I know several people and also myself have used the woofing program to travel. But I worked on a farm once that had some woofers come through. Were great workers, and they were planning on starting a farm and just gaining, details of how they want to start their farm.
Yeah. Yes.
My name's Julie, and I'm 13. We have a 2,500 square foot community garden, or what is supposed to be a community garden, and we just can't maintain all of it with our busy schedule, and we're wondering how we can have some of it and how we can get our neighbors involved in gardening their own food out of a small portion of our backyard that we can't maintain. Because most of them already have little gardens of their own, but some of them don't, and how can we get them involved?
So I love your big picture thinking and like involving other people.
Yeah.
I love that. I would say cover crop. So don't try to produce in that sort of like what's going to go into my basket sort of way on a bunch of it, but cover crop it, and then your pollinators will come in, and your soil will be built, and that would be my suggestion. Not to say I don't want you to involve the others, but perhaps a little of both.
And there's some good examples of community gardens that have been started in our region, and you might find some people connected to those efforts who would be useful to talk to. Up at Just Roots in Greenfield, they could be useful at the Northampton Community Farm, and they have community gardens associated with that, so it might be useful to talk to them. And I just got an email about a community garden that used to exist in Greenfield and then ran into some troubles, and they're sort of starting it up again. And so give me your email address afterwards, and I'll see if I can find it and send it to you, and you might be able to connect with them too.
And Franklin Land Trust as well.
She said Franklin Land Trust.
Okay, one more question, and then I think our panelists would be glad to talk with you in the lobby. Yeah, right here? Yes.
What were some of the biggest challenges you came across that weren't weather related?
What were some of the biggest challenges you came across that weren't weather related?
Being a new beginner farmer, I run across them on a daily basis. You know, it's anything, like I said before, like your tire blowing out on your tractor. You know, I need that tractor every day to get the work done that I need to get done. And it's bumps in the road like that, you know, in the moment, it's the worst thing that happened to you in that day, and, you know, your life's over kind of thing. But you also have to look bigger picture if it's just, you know, that small thing that happened to you. You know, other struggles or bumps in the road that I've had is, let me think. You know, employees have been a big issue for me in the past couple of years, is finding that right person that can do what I need to get done, and, you know, hope they're going to come back next year kind of thing. Money is a big issue with, especially a new beginner farmer that just doesn't have a lot of it and is starting with not as much as a 16-year-old farm has. Not having the markets that, you know, a 40-year-old farm has. But I'm now in my 6th season kind of, you know, getting used to the daily and weekly and monthly routines of how the farm runs, and putting it as a mental note now. So from years to come, when the tire blows out on the tractor or when, you know, my plants get a disease in the field, I'm going to know what to do, or at least have a better idea of, you know, how to fix it. And I think they always call farmers the jack of all trades. You might not be good at one specific thing, but you know how to do a little of each, and it gets you by. So, you know, farming's really adapt and overcome to your situation. So.
Missy?
Injury, I don't know if we've mentioned that, but, you know, just while working, post-hole digger in the head, like slicing the thumb open, like just bad news, injuries can happen, and as much as we try to prevent them, that's when we're very actively using our bodies. That's always a risk. We try to do as much as we can with preventative care. The sun is a huge factor. That's weather-ish, but that's, you know, we're very exposed to the sun.
All right, well, thank you. I want to thank our panelists. Yeah.